Hello, good afternoon. I hope all of you are very fine and doing very well in your studies. So today in this session we are going to discuss about physical anthropology, right? How you can score more in paper 1. So you know that physical anthropology makes the substantial portion of paper 1, right? And this is the portion in which you can increase your score to a great extent. The reason are multifold because it is relatively objective, it is easy, it has a lot of diagrams, figures, right, that will automatically give you decent marks than the other parts. So let us discuss in this session about physical anthropology, right. So I will answer 6 very fundamental questions that you must know, that you must understand about the physical anthropology, right. So the first question is that what it is, and the second question is what it covers, right, in your syllabus, what it covers, or you can say its scope. Then we are going to discuss some of the most fundamental myth that many of you are confused, right, whether we should take anthropology at all or not, because you think that you have to study a lot of biology, right. So that myth we are going to deal. Then what is the importance of physical anthropology? Then the fourth, why it is more scoring. Fifth, why it is more scoring. And the sixth question is that how you can increase your score, how you can learn physical anthropology to its best, right? So how to score more. So let me answer all these 6 questions one by one, right? So what is it? Basically, physical anthropology, right? It studies the biological aspect, the physical aspect, the animal aspect of humankind. See, we are an animal, right? Because we are the part of animal kingdom, we are the member of animal kingdom, we are primates, we are mammals, right? And at the same time, we live in a society, in a community, so we are member of a society also. So when we study the member of a society, then we study the socio-cultural aspect. Here the main emphasis is on the biological aspect, the physiological aspect, the genetic aspect, right? But this genetic aspect or this biological aspect or this adaptational aspect, it is not separated, it is not isolated from the socio-cultural aspect. Rather, here when we talk about the biological aspect, then we discuss this in a holistic sense, right? Because anthropology is a holistic science. Okay, if you talk about the growth, human growth, so do you think in growth of human beings only genetic factors or biological factors play a role? No. Basically your cultural aspects, your nutrition, the incidence of disease, availability of healthcare, right? All these factors also play an important role. So you cannot say that we are only and only covering the biological aspect, rather our focus is holistic, right? We try to understand the biology in a whole. The biological aspect make a part of it. But in this part, the more emphasis will be on that by connecting with the socio-cultural and other aspects of humankind. So that is it, right? So it is the study of the biological aspect in a holistic manner at the all times and all places. In the last video, I have discussed also about what anthropology is, what is its scope, right? What is its definition. So in that I told you that it is the study of mainly these two aspects, that is the biological aspect and socio-cultural aspect over time and space, right? So biological aspect over time, that means we are dealing with evolution, and biological aspect over space, that means we are discussing here or we are covering diversity or variations, variety of human beings, right? Variations, different type of populations are there who belong to different races, right? Who have different biological characteristics, right? Some people are resistant to some diseases, some are not, right? In some places, some blood group is more prevalent, right? And in others, other blood groups are more prevalent, right? When you come to it, you will understand it, right? Like in northern Bihar and this region, B blood group is more prevalent, right? In Europe, A blood group is more prevalent. You might have heard about the RH factor, right? That positive and negative that you see, somebody have O positive, somebody have B positive. So this positive represents RH factor, right? Rhesus monkey से हमने ये लिया है. So this RH factor, this positive and negative, its distribution is also across the populations, it varies, right? In Basque population of Spain, the percentage of this positive is very high, up to 30%. Although in the world, the distribution is around 85 to 15%, right? So that you have to understand that we are talking about this diversity. But in this diversity, in this evolution, we are not segregating, we are not completely leaving our socio-cultural part. Why? I am telling you, this evolution, human evolution, is not only dependent on the biological factors, right? For example, your mutation, recombination, genetic drift and all. Rather, our evolution is dependent on the cultural factors also, right? During the course of evolution, सबसे पहले क्या हुआ? We stand erect, दो टांग पे खड़े हुए, biped बने हम, right? Then we freed our hands. With these hands, we made certain tools, and with those tools, we started processing the food. When we started processing the food becomes soft and soft. So we did not require the heavy jaw muscles, the large teeth, canines, right? So slowly and steadily, our jaw size reduced. When you have to hunt more and more animals to feed the population around you, your brain size start increasing. So here you can just see that these things, what it indicates? It indicates that cultural factors, social factors also contributed to the biological evolution. So we are not segregating the two things, right? The socio-cultural part also we are studying together. It is not completely isolated, so that you must understand. Now I believe you have understood what is it. Now I say this physical anthropology, right? But sometime you may hear another term, that is biological anthropology, right? Some colleges, some universities offer the course in physical anthropology, others they offer the course in biological anthropology. So what is the difference between the two? Right, basically physical anthropology is the old name of this physical anthropology is the old name of this branch or this major specialization of anthropology. But after 1950s, the scope of physical anthropology, it widened, right? Earlier the focus was mainly on the anthropometry. What is anthropometry? It is a symbol term, you don't have to dig much. Anthropos plus metry, right? Metry means measurement. तो हमारे शरीर का measurement, that is anthropometry. And earlier the focus was on anthropometry and classification of humans into different categories or races, right? So here the scope or the focus of this branch, this specialization of anthropology was limited. Later on, the scope was expanded. Now we cover genetics, we cover serology, blood studies, we cover primatology, study of primates, right? And other major developments in human biology. So basically here when the scope was limited, then we call it physical anthropology, or we also sometimes call it classical physical anthropology. Later on the scope was expanded. This is also known as biological anthropology or new physical anthropology, right? So that is the distinction between the two. I hope that is necessary for you to know that much. Okay, then what it covers, so this covers physical anthropology, the scope was limited, and here the scope was expanded. So you can talk about the limited scope and the expanded scope, right? So what was the limited scope? Here the focus was mainly on anthropometry and the classification of humans into different categories, right? Here the focus was much more expanded. Here the scope was interdisciplinary, right? Because यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? We start borrowing from other disciplines so that we can know much more detail about human beings, their evolution, their variations that exist on the different parts of the world, right? So that is how we can see the scope. But still, let me tell you some of the points which are there in this physical or biological anthropology, right? We normally do not make a distinction between the two terms, right? We normally say the two terms colloquially, synonymously, so we don't make much difference, right? Even your exam also does not make much distinction. When asked specially, you have to make this distinction, otherwise you can take it commonly. Okay, so what it covers, we will study here cell, right? Cell biology, some parts of cell, right? What is a cell, what are the various cell organelles which are found in it, right? Chromosomes, then DNA, RNA, protein synthesis that we study in cell, right? After that we have to study evolution, organic evolution, that how organisms evolve, what are the various factors responsible for the evolution that we study. We will study various theories, right, from the religious theories to the scientific theories that tries to explain human evolution, right, or the organic evolution, right. We will study human variations, right. You know that humans across this space, across the globe, throughout the world, we are not similar. We have dissimilarities in our skin color, in our eye color, in our heights, hair type, hair color, right? Or you can just count any number of things. You can just count the internal genetic differences like, the resistance to certain diseases, the type of blood groups, right? All these things. So these variations we study in that, right? We study genetics, human genetics, and the principles which can be useful to understand the human differences and similarities, human evolution also, right? So the principles of genetics we will study, but here do not get confused that we are not going in much detail about the genetics. Our purpose of using genetics or the genetic tools which are there, whether it is RT-PCR, you can use it also, right? Whether it is recombinant DNA technology. So our purpose is to understand humanity. Our purpose is to understand this evolution and this diversity of humankind, not explaining those topics per se. Those topics that we are studying, our purpose is to understand, to explain the humanity, right? We try to explain ourselves. We try to gossip about ourselves using these principles and techniques that we study in genetics. So it is not hardcore genetics, right? We are using those principles in a very superficial manner just to explain our own existence. Then we study primatology, right? There was a question also this year, because many of the students, they do not cover primatology, right? They leave it. The reason was that hardly UPSC will ask one question, that is the anatomical differences between the apes and men, right? So, or at the best, some intelligent students, they try to think that we can just cover the locomotion patterns of the primates, right? But they did not expect that some famous scholar, primatologist can be asked, or his or her contribution can be asked. So this year the question was the contribution of Jane Goodall, who was the most popular primatologist of her time, right, of the 20th century, who herself was the assistant of Louis Leakey, the famous primatologist, you can say paleoanthropologist, archaeologist of his time, right? And she basically worked extensively in Africa, right? Kenya, Tanzania, and this area. So if we study anthropologists, socio-cultural anthropologists, if we study the contribution of others, why we should miss out on this one? All the standard books have given her photograph. Her major contribution is written in all the major standard books. Why the students leave it? That is most, you can say it's a matter of great, what you can say, thinking in itself, that why students leave the contribution of Jane Goodall. You can find n number of documentaries on her name if you just Google it on or YouTube it. So that question was very well expected. So don't leave out on this portion of primatology, right? Primatology means study of primates. We humans also belong to this order of primates, along with other apes, monkeys, right? So that is also covered into this the scope of physical anthropology, right? Then we study the paleoprimatology. Now this is primatology, paleoprimatology. What do we mean by paleo? Means ancient, right? Extinct primates की fossils को study करते हैं हम paleoprimatology में, right? Then there is another branch. In this paleoprimatology, you can just think about Ramapithecus, Proconsuls, Shivapithecus, right? Or other extinct primates. You might have heard the name, these Ramapithecus and Shivapithecus. Then we study paleoanthropology. So in paleoanthropology, what we study? Again, this is extinct, and anthropology means humans, our human ancestors, right? Australopithecus, Erectus, Neanderthals, and modern humans, right? That we try to understand here. Then we try to understand the ecology, environment, and how we humans have adapted to variety of environments, right? Because you can just think that we humans live in the deserts, in the tropical areas, right? We live in the hilltops, mountains. We live in the polar regions. We live in the cold regions of Europe, right? So we have adapted to different ecologies, and different ecologies have its own challenges in terms of the nutrition, in terms of the environmental stresses like heat, cold, or the deficiency of oxygen. So how we have adapted to them, right? Is in that adaptation only our biology played a role, or this biology is accompanied by our cultural response also? आपको गर्मी लगती है तो आप लाइट कलर के कपड़े पहनते हैं. Why? Because this is your cultural response to the heat, right? This is your cultural response. Why don't you wear this dark colored and thick clothing in the summer season? Why do you use this ACs and coolers? So this is your cultural response. That is how you adapt to the environmental stress. So our biology also help us. How our biology help us that sweating is a response, biological response, right? These clothes, these fan and coolers and ACs, these are the response from the culture, or the technology is the response of our production, right? So that you study ecology and adaptations. Then we also study the adaptations to different diseases also. You know that in the tribal pockets of India, there is a high prevalence of sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a disease and which can kill an individual, right? Because this RBCs of those individuals are sickle shaped, they are not oval. So those sickle shaped RBCs, they protect those tribal people from malaria, right? The malarial parasite cannot colonize those sickle shaped RBCs because they do not provide these parasites sufficient energy for their reproduction, right, for their growth. So malaria does not harm to these people, right? So you can understand this, how the people in the forested, malaria infested regions have adapted. That is the biological response, right? That is the genetic response. Genes are responding in it, right? So this is the ecology and adaptation that you have to study. Then you have to study this race, where different races are there, right? So what are the factors responsible for the formation of race? Okay, then how various races differ, what are the criterias, right? How you can classify, what are the determinants, how race is formed. You have understood that in evolution different species evolve, right? So race is not a different species, race is a subspecies, you can say, because we humans belong to one species, that is Homo sapiens sapiens, and among these Homo sapiens sapiens there are variety of people, right? Some of dark colored, some of fair colored, some of the in between, some have different it audible? Okay. So yes, so we were talking about the race, right? Whether this concept is a valid concept or not, there is a debate on this, because we all know that colonizers, colonial powers have used this concept of white man's burden, right, to colonize the non-white people or their territories. So after this World War II, UNESCO and the leading scientists of the time, they have rejected the concept of race, right? And this concept of race, right, this term race has been replaced with ethnic groups. So what is more acceptable nowadays is ethnic groups, right? Although race as a concept is rejected, but it is still in use in one specialization of physical anthropology, that is forensic anthropology, right? In which we use the anthropological knowledge, anthropological insights to solve crime, the questions of law, right? CID देखा होगा, उसमें कितना forensic analysis होता है, that also is a part of physical anthropology. So this is what we have to study here, and we also study, this physical anthropology. There is a branch that is known as kinanthropometry, that is known as anthropology of sports. Kinanthropometry. This is the branch of physical anthropology, specialization in physical anthropology, which is basically the anthropometry of sports. So basically sports में कैसा sportsman होना चाहिए, right? Who is better suited. So that all is basically done, is studied in kinanthropometry. Then we have forensics anthropology, right? So that is another branch that we have to study, that we apply the knowledge of physical anthropology, the knowledge of race, human variations, human biology, human anatomy, right? Whether it is dental anatomy, jaw anatomy, the anatomy of the forehead, mandible, right, pelvis, okay, or bone density, all these things, these are applied to solve the crimes. That comes under forensic anthropology. Then there is nutritional anthropology. You know that there are many people in India, especially in the rural pockets or in the backward regions. So in those regions, basically, the people are suffering from the malnutrition. Some people are suffering from overnutrition. So how this nutritional anthropology, the knowledge of nutrition, the knowledge of bodily composition, right, how it can be helpful in solving this problem of malnutrition, or how we can make our population, our people healthy. So that is basically comes under the physical anthropology. And finally we study disease, right? Nowadays we are, suffering the havoc of the pandemic. So that also comes under the physical anthropology, right? So what are the causes, and what is the prevalence rate? So that comes under epidemiological anthropology. So we study that also, right? Now let us come on our third question of today, that what are the myths surrounding physical anthropology? Many of you believe that only the people from biology background should take anthropology, because the physical anthropology, it covers a lot of portion, right? And it is the most scoring one too. So the people from biology background should take it. I have already addressed this question, so I'm again taking this question. See, this is a myth. The reason behind it is because, yes, there is one thing that gives a little edge to the students who have studied biology up to the 12th, but that is only in terms of memorizing or understanding some terms, right? That is the only benefit. But if you study that seriously, within a week or so, you can, use all those terminologies which are essential for it. Other than that, there is no other edge the people of biology will get, right? Or medical science will have any other edge. Because even if I ask some of the terms, right? If I ask, I usually ask from the people that what is the difference between haploid, haplotype and homologous. So many students confused in that only, right? If I ask what is the difference between paleoanthropology and paleoprimatology, many basically we were in the very first. So basically कुछ बेसिक चीजें हैं, उनमें थोड़ा सा फर्क, यस टर्मिनोलॉजी जो है उसको समझने में हो सकता है. उसके अलावा there is not at all a single benefit that the biology people have over the other student of humanities or engineering background. That is it. And after 1 week of familiarization with the physical anthropology, there is no difference between the two. Rather, the people from other backgrounds try to memorize and remember those terms in a better way than those who already have a background. That I have personally observed, right? Then, what is its importance? And this importance that I am discussing here, the importance in this examination I am taking, right? So, what is its importance? Let me tell you that in 2019, see, all you know that in one paper there are two sections, section A and section B. So in 2019, there was 170 marks, paper 1, 170 marks were from this portion, physical anthropology, out of what? 250. Out of 250, in paper 1, you will have 170 marks, right? In section A, there was 70 marks, which is normally socio-cultural anthropology, and in section B, there was 100 marks. That is in 2019. In 2020, the total was 195 from section 1, 65 and 1, this is 60 and this is 135 in section B. So this is the importance of physical anthropology or biological anthropology in paper 1 of anthropology, optional, right? So you can just think of it that if you just study this portion, right, थोड़ा ठीक से अगर इस portion को पढ़ोगे, then it can definitely give you an edge. See, this portion, approximately you just take it 175 marks. What is the rest? Rest is just 75, right? In which you have theories, you have socio-cultural part that is also relatively very easy, right? So this 175 marks, you can score quite a high in this portion, and if you score high in this portion, your decent score in paper 1 is secured, right? Your score is secure that you do not have to put much efforts on other things. Now, let me tell you that why this is more scoring. Why physical anthropology is more scoring. So, this is more scoring because number 1, this is objective, right? अगर डीएनए रेप्लिकेशन होता है तो होता है, उसका एक मैकेनिज्म है, वो है, राइट? उसका जो सिग्निफिकेंस है वो है, राइट? So this is objective. You can know first hand. Right? अगर DNA replication आपसे पूछा गया है, then you can answer that very, very easily. And it is conceptual. And if the answer, the dimensions of the answer are limited, so naturally where will the examiner cut off marks? Examiner cannot deduct marks. If you have written everything which is required, so the examiner cannot deduct marks. Then after that, why it is more scoring? Because you will find a lot of diagrams and you can use a lot of flowcharts to substantiate your answer. So that is why also it is very, very scoring. Okay? So then let me tell you what you should do, how you can score more with physical anthropology. You have already seen that that how much it contribute to overall paper 1, right? 175 out of what? 250 marks is normally this much is physical anthropology, right? And anyone with decent understanding at least can address 150 marks, right? आपके पास choice भी होती है यहाँ पे. You have choice. You can choose any question. If you feel that you can, you do not have better understanding on some question, then you can choose from socio-cultural part, from archaeology, right? So that is what it is there. So if you address this 170 marks objectively, conceptually, with proper diagrams, I believe you can do much, much better in terms of your score in paper 1. Now what you should do? See, first I will tell you about your study part. See, this portion is conceptual, right? And to understand the concepts of physical anthropology, you have to understand a little bit of terminology. Right? There are terms, there is a jargon of this subject that you must come across. You must think about all those terms, you must know about those terms. So the first thing is the familiarization with this subject by studying the basic terms. I will provide you the terminology of the entire physical anthropology, the main terms that we will see during the course, right? And I will explain each and every term in a lucid manner. You will also get a handout on these terms so that you have a clarity first hand before you come to the class, right? Then the second thing in this physical part, you should be thorough with the concepts, right? Or you can say conceptual clarity is must. For any discipline as such, the conceptual clarity is must, and here too, because if you do not know the concept, then naturally it is not doable. You cannot write anything. You have to have a grasp over the subject. That is a necessity. Then third thing is that what you do, that you should give examples to substantiate your concept, right? You should gather as many examples, you should pen it down wherever you have written the concept, because this example adds substance to your answer. Then fourth thing is use diagrams and flowcharts. This diagrams and flowcharts is a very essential component here. Okay, in some areas, especially in paleoanthropology, you may require to make some maps, India map, Africa map, or somewhere else, right, to show the distribution of fossils, so that you do it. And finally, you should know the relevance of that particular thing, right? You should know what is the relevance of pedigree analysis, what is the relevance of twin study, what is the relevance of studying growth and development, right? What is the relevance of studying the race? Okay, all these things. What is the relevance of studying the nutritional anthropology? What is the relevance of studying the ecological anthropology and adaptations? All these things you must understand the relevance of anything, because this relevance is necessary to show you to it help you to connect your conceptual understanding with the application part. And I just try to recall that I gave you one SHR strategy in earlier sessions, that S is the simplicity, H is the holism, and R is the relevance. So that is the necessity of your every answer, right? This holism part we will cover when we come to the writing portion. Basically what I am telling you, this is the understanding part, that these 5 things you must do, right? So you must know the terminology. आप terms को बार बार देखो and try to think about those terms, right? Try to understand their meaning. Think about the concepts. जितने भी concept हैं, whatever concepts are there, discuss with your friends, try to write them down, think, analyze, brainstorm on them, and associate examples with them, these concepts, right, to add substance to these concepts, and then practice diagrams and flowcharts again and again. See, unless you practice flowcharts and diagrams, it will consume a lot of time in the examination center, and you may feel that these diagrams are eating too much time of yours. Now, there is a question that many of the students ask me that, sir, हमसे तो अच्छा diagram नहीं बनता है, so what I should do? Basically, the examiner is not interested in the beauty of your diagram. Rather, the examiner is looking into the content. The examiner is interested in one thing, that is how you illustrate your diagram. Illustration is more important rather than the beauty of the diagram, right? Some people think that the diagram of a skull is very difficult, right? So diagram of a skull of maybe ape or we humans, it is difficult. So it is not that difficult, right? You can practice it, and within few days you can master it also, right? And in anthropology there is not much that you do not cannot do. Well, the thing is that what you should have in mind is that you must know that what you are making, what you are trying to draw. This is the skull of modern human, right? And what I have drawn here, I have drawn it, may not be very beautiful, right? But what I am trying to show, I have shown everything that I wanted to show, right? So what is it? What modern humans have and what the apes do not have, let me compare here in this diagram, right? So this is the skull of ape and this is the skull of humans. Right. So what is the difference that you can see? You must know the difference rather than just focusing on the beauty of the diagram. So what we try to show, we have a well developed forehead. The forehead is not there, right? Our brow ridges that we call supraorbital ridges are not that prominent. It is hardly, thoda sa hai. यहाँ पे these brow ridges are very very prominent, and you can just feel, you can just think, just when you see any ape, okay, so you can observe it that it is massive. The jaw to the skull ratio, this is the jaw to the cranium ratio is very disproportionate. The facial part is much larger than this head part, but in humans the facial part is very small. Okay, you can just see the face is orthognathic. हमारा जो facial profile है, this is orthognathic here, and it is prognathic. So what I have drawn this diagram, it is not on the basis of the beauty, rather illustration, right? And when you have to illustrate, I have to write it, right? This is this supraorbital ridge. This one here is known as sagittal crest, right? Why it is known as sagittal crest? Because this is sagittal suture is there on which the muscles, jaw muscles of the massive jaw muscles of these apes are attached. हमारे को, we humans do not require such massive muscles. Why? Because we eat processed soft food. But these apes, they eat raw food. That is why they require that massive muscles. They are attached to the top of their head at the sagittal suture. Okay. Then our spinal cord, it enters through this, just at the bottom of our skull here, right? So this portion where it enters, it is known as foramen magnum. याद हो जाएगा थोड़े दिनों में. But this foramen magnum, it is not vertically located, rather it is here in case of apes. Why? Because हम तो सीधा खड़े हैं, we stand erect, but the apes, they do not erect straight, right? वो four limbs पे चलते हैं. That is why their vertebra is almost parallel to the ground. In our case, it is vertical, right? So that you have to show. Then you can just see that our mandible and jaws are small. Our teeth are small as compared to these, right? We have a well-developed chin. There is no chin in case of apes, right? So all these features you have to show rather than just focusing on the beauty, right? We will talk about other diagrams in the classes to come, right? And if you practice it 5 to 6 times, you can very well easily make these diagrams. These are not very difficult to make. And for my general advice to each one of you is that if you have mastery over the diagrams by practicing on them 5, 6 or 10 times, I believe that you can score very, very good score in this physical part. Because I know that you can memorize this much material, because whatever you study in this in biological portion of this, you have to cover that in GS. आप ऐसा छोड़ नहीं सकते उस portion को कि हमें नहीं पढ़ना है, because whatever you require in this, either these terminologies, you have to study most part of it in your GS paper to clear your prelims or to clear your mains, right? You require that much terminology and all, right? So these diagrams you have to practice again and again, right? And when you are going to the exam, then again you have to follow this simplicity, holism and relevance part, right? Now in this simplicity, holism and relevance, that your every answer should reflect. When you write any answer of physical anthropology, you should try to incorporate your understanding of sociocultural part wherever you can relate it, right? This is not completely, or this is not an isolated system, because anthropology is whole. We humans are whole. We do not live in isolation, that sometimes we are animals and sometimes we are a member of a society. No, we live in fusion, right? So we cannot see these two things as isolated or segregated. So whenever you have to address these questions on physical anthropology, right, and everything that you see, whether it is evolution, whether it is the variations, whether it is growth and development, whether it is race, whether it is adaptations, whether it is sports anthropology, whether it is forensics, right, even genetics, right? Genetics में भी क्या होता है, that when we see that we study cross, right, cross fertilization. So this cross, in case of humans, it is determined by the cultural factors. आप शादी अपनी पसंद से नहीं कर सकते हो, right? There are many factors. Although आजकल liberty है, चल रहा है सब, but still basically your caste factor, your religion factor, as well as other your racial features, right? All these play a very important role. So even genetics require your cultural response, right? So you cannot say that it is an isolated system. It is not an isolated system. Physical anthropology, whatever you have to study, you have to explain to the examiner with a combination to your socio-cultural part. So that is all that I have to say about this session. I have addressed all these six questions regarding the physical anthropology. What is it? What it covers? What are the myths surrounding it? And what is its importance? Why it is more scoring? And how you can score more. For scoring more in any paper, you should keep your explanations as simple as you can. You have to use as many headings as you can, because headings give a better clarity to the examiner. Explain each and every part of the question. In physical anthropology, if it requires the socio-cultural aspect to be incorporated, please do respond to it. And many students do make this mistake that, sir, आपने तो इतना पूछा था, इतना मैंने बोल दिया. No. Anthropology require holism. That is a most important aspect of anthropology, and you cannot escape from that. So whenever you answer any question on anthropology, you have to be very, very specific, that you you incorporate all the aspects that are related to that concept. And you must know the relevance of that concept, because without relevance, your answer or your understanding lack application, and you are being selected as an administrator who should use his or her knowledge for the societal welfare, societal benefits, right? So you cannot run away. You must know the relevance and demonstrate to the examiner that you know the relevance, right? So that is it from my side. I believe it might help you, and we will discuss in the next class some questions related to anthropology. Okay, some question answer session we will take in some days. So till then, thank you, take care and stay safe.